Vajrasattva Samaya Manisamaya Vajrasattva Venapatista Kriyama Bhava Satushama Bhava Sapushama Bhava Narakama Bhava Sarvasiddham Mekriyacha Sarva Karma Suchame Sham Shriya Kuruham Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajramani Mucha Vajra Bhava Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Om Bhagavato Samaya Manubhanaya Bhagavato Deva Bharicha Shishame Bhava Sudokayo Me Bhava Sudokayo Me Bhava Anuredo Me Bhava Sawasini Me Jayacha Sawadama Suzame Zidanje Angulupam Ha 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 Ho Bhagavana Sawadajaya Vantirma Melusa Vadabhavana Samaya Sarva Hompe Dorje Chang Buddha III. I'd like to read part of a
I'd like to read part of an exposition today called Beginninglessness, Boundlessness, and Impermanence. Disciples will need to understand the answer to the first question that was posed a moment ago. However, there are two other questions that I will answer first. Many people fear ghosts. However, we should regard ghosts so that we don't fear them. Actually, this is not a problem. Only those who have not learned the sutras and do not understand the Dharma and do not understand the relationship of the 6 realms of reincarnation will fear ghosts. Ghosts are the same as humans, except that their good fortune is worse and their negative karma is heavier. They, like humans, are living beings. They also are beings whom we should save. If you do not truly understand this point, then it will be difficult for you to be accomplished in the course of learning the Dharma. First of all, ghosts are beings who we should lead to liberation. It's not a matter of fearing them or not fearing them. We should even often have contact with them. Just as we need to save living beings that are fish or other aquatic animals or birds, we need to save spirits. Spirits also have life. It is just that their outer form is different and they live in a different world than we do. However, we should treat all living beings equally. Saving humans and saving ghosts is the same thing. When a ghost fights with a human, no matter what the situation may be, a true greatly virtuous one, a true holy person will not be biased in favor of the human and oppress the ghost. He will also not be biased in favor of the ghost and oppress the human. He surely will take the middle position. He will bestow the Dharma on the ghost and the human equally so that they both become liberated. This is what a true Buddhist should do. However, if we do not have the ability to save ghosts, what should we do? We should understand even further the sufferings of the 6 realms of reincarnation. The ghost realm is one of those realms. We should wholeheartedly cultivate ourselves. The cultivation I'm referring to is not simply reciting sutras or chanting mantras every day, nor is it simply expounding the Dharma or helping others by doing good deeds. With cultivation, you also have to start with the fundamentals of the four immeasurable minds, the constant practice of the six perfections and the 10 virtues. And this is still not enough. You must also keep in mind the Dharma that you've learned and what division it belongs to. You must pay attention to how much of that Dharma you have actually carried out, and you must be careful about whether your actions accord with the precepts laid down by Shakyamuni Buddha or the special precepts of the esoteric school. This is very important. Take, for example, what happened this time with the car. You could not find a wire or string or to protect the car, and he meant like a alarm. This is the way they translated it into English, but the Buddha Master told them to put an alarm on the car. Still, you should not have just dropped that matter so casually. If it were I would not have acted like that. I'm telling you honestly that if it were I certainly would not have acted like that. If my master, who is your Vajra Grandmaster, instructed me to find an alarm, I'll say, to protect the car, and I did not find it, and I would certainly guard the car myself that night. Even if I had to get into the car and open the window or door for air, I would still sit in the car and guard it. I would not do what you did and not say anything about it for 2 days. That is not the conduct of one who truly has right understanding and right view. Although you think that it's a very small matter, although you thought that a bad person would not come to harm the car, and although such a bad person did not, in fact, come, nonetheless, your conduct did not accord with the instructions of the Buddha, the Bodhisattvas, and the Master. Nor did you conduct accord with the vows and cultivation of a practitioner. Disciples, I tell you, this is not acceptable. You yourselves thought that it was a small matter, but this certainly is not the conduct that reflects true correspondence of the three karmas of thought, speech, and action. Cultivation entails handling even details and very small matters well. The key point is not how many good deeds you've done or how many matters you've carried out. What is most key is whether you treat the Dharma matter that is before you and the Dharma of the Buddha with perfect devotion. That is, whether you carry out that Dharma matter 100%. It is unacceptable to fall even slightly short of this 100%. If you fall short even slightly, then you would be a bodhisattva in the Dharma realm who has impure karma. Hasn't a bodhisattva with impure karma become one with wrong understanding and wrong views? Thus, one cultivates oneself through small matters. Moreover, when it comes to matters of principle, you must be very strict and cautious. Of course, when you do something wrong out of ignorance, the resulting karma is light. However, if you purposely do something wrong and don't care, that is unacceptable. It is not a matter of whether the car was in any danger or might be stolen. The key point is how you heed the words of the Master. Some people may ask, why I have to be so strange? But didn't you hear what I just said? Only the worst people would ask such a question. Do you understand? I previously said to certain people, quickly, go and prepare my meal. Hurry up. If my meal comes late, I will not eat it. Would a Buddha or a Bodhisattva say that? Think about it. Is there a Buddha or Bodhisattva who would act like that? Isn't acting like that extremely bad? Would I still speak like that even if I clearly knew that I would be acting in a bad way? I had my purpose in speaking those words. I wanted to see which persons would give rise to a biased view and which persons would not. No matter what I, their master, say to them, they always obey me. Do you understand? My purpose in uttering such words is profound. You cannot discern my purpose. All right, I don't want to say anything more about that. I just casually mentioned this point. We should all pay attention because this is the Dharma ending. age. And I wanted to start with this one because sometimes we think that everything concerns just our matters here, just what bothers us as human beings. And in a subtle way, without realizing it, we're still putting ourselves first and above all other beings. And he's talking about, I know that a lot of people do have a fear of ghosts. And when I was reading this, and this is maybe the 10th time that I've read it to myself, I asked myself, do I have a fear of ghosts? All of this talk about all beings in all the realms and all that. And like we talk about that kind of stuff. But I'm talking about if a ghost manifested right here, then what? So we have to not think we have overcome something or surmounted a view just because we agree that all living beings in all realms deserve, to be introduced to the Dharma. But when do you introduce a ghost to the Dharma? When? And when is that? When they appear to you, right? So as long as one hasn't appeared to me, like I'll agree. Like I agree, like I'm going to preach the Dharma to the ghosts and everything, but let one appear, and then I'm going to be trying to call somebody, or I'm looking, or certainly the fear would be there. So that's why he talks about cultivation has to be incremental, and we have to fulfill all of those steps so that at the time that we encounter that, the fear will not be there, but the great compassion will arise. So if you are afraid of a ghost appearing, and I can, quite frankly, I like a different job. I'm just speaking honestly. I don't want to have to preach to the ghosts. It just depends on whether the defilements that cause the arising in the hungry ghost realm brings with it dejection and sorrow and not doing, or whether that ghost is like violent and and angry. It makes a difference because I'm just looking at my skills, and I know for myself what skills I have and what skills I don't have. So if there was a forlorn ghost that appeared to me, I could happily and gladly preach the Dharma. But if it was a very powerful ghost, like we had a property once, and I'm not speaking of Heartwood, even though we know Heartwood was full of ghosts, and they were pretty belligerent when we first moved there, but we did tell them why we were there, and we invited them to stay and to listen to this wonderful Dharma, and we acknowledged them, and they became, very tame ghosts. I think all except one, very, very delightful. So the one that we couldn't handle, then we just called on the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas to keep him in check because they needed somebody, stronger than us. But I lived in another place, and we had like the poltergeist kind can move things around, not just show themselves, but can move things around. But you will find that or the kind that you just see them flit in the corner of your eye, and then you go and you don't see them, but you can sense them and sense the movement, but the timing is not such that we're moving in tandem with time. So I wanted to say that because he says that we should not be afraid of them. If we are afraid of them, it means that we have not cultivated ourselves enough to be able to be present with them. And I don't know why I'm reading it to you, but I'm reading it. I'm reading it to you. And one thing that it does for me is it helps me to examine. I want to help save all living beings. If I just want to save human beings, then I'll make that vow and I'll try to live into that vow. Some people they love animals. They don't love humans so much, but they love animals, and so they have a great capacity and quality to be there, for the animals. Me and animals, not so much. So I'm having to work on, you have to look at and begin to work on those areas that don't feel comfortable for you, and figure out in your mind, what is it, that's holding you back from just having the true altruism for all living beings. And then you have to work on that. So I got cats in my house, and they're cage cats, and I've tried for we've been living together for 30 years, and she's always had 3 or 4 or 5 cats, and I've been trying for 30 years, to really vibe with the cats. But this year, I'm really focusing in on some things. And I realized no matter how much I can say, hey, Jinxie, Jinxie, and all of that, like in my own mind, if you were reading my mind, you would know how I felt about Jinx for real. I love Kay, so I say, hey, Jinxie, Jinxie, because I love Kay, not because I love Jinx or didn't. But I have now fallen in love with Jinx. And Jinx is entirely different with me because I acknowledged, my fault, that I did not like animals. I don't think animals should be on my bed. The floor, and they have their own little bed. They need to get in it. I'm not trying to get in their bed, and so I've always felt this way. And when he was a little baby, he got up on, they go for this and they find something higher and something higher. And so he jumped in the window seat, the cushion, and then he jumped on the little table, and then he jumped on the counter. And I went bonkers because I don't believe I don't believe Paul should be on the counter, And I just said, I don't know if I can handle this, because I feel like my food goes up there. And I could not keep that cat off the counter. Not when I was hating him, but when I began to love him and talk to him and say, Jinx, you can't get up here. I say, get down, Jinx. And he looked and he left me down. But the first time he did it, I got him down. And then he would shy away from me. And I felt bad about that. Then I confessed my meanness towards him. And it was a reflex. It was just a reflex. But I knew I had to control my reflex. And if I really wanted to be who I say I am, and I do. And so I had to work with my reflex. I had to gently go and take him off the counter when he sat on the counter. I have to explain to him why he can't be up there. And even if he doesn't understand what I'm saying, he understands the energy that I'm coming at him with, And I'm saying this because this is what cultivation is. It's not just knowing something or saying it uh, or reciting it when you're not confronted with the situation. It is when you're in the situation. And my life is so good. I'm really just thinking about how wonderful my life is. Maybe you should do the same. So there's not many things I can complain about in my life. You know, it's now down to a cat. You know, and how wonderful that is because some of us have real difficult issues, but as we continue to cultivate, we start to see how those issues like go away. They go away, and they go away not so much because we're trying to make them go away, but there's something that shifts in the external structure of your life that makes you hold those things in a different way. Whether it's somebody who's dying that you love, whether it's your children and you already know where what they're doing is going to lead, and you can't convince them to go in another way. Whether it's ripening karma that is that. Actually brings suffering, then one has to learn how to accept even suffering. You don't have to make more suffering for yourself by how your mind runs away. You could just be there with the suffering, understanding this is cause and effect. And just that understanding allows us to make it through that particular kind of suffering. So it's not like suddenly everything will be peaches and roses because, actually what you're doing is wearing out, using up bad karma. So stuff gets worse before it gets better. You got to know that. It gets worse before it gets better because it's pushing forward and ripening, allowing the bad karma to ripen, move off the screen, and that's done with, never to be brought up again. On the other hand, some of the things that we do in our cultivation actually protect us from karma scheduled for ripening, and it sort of like pushes it to the back so that by the time it does in fact ripen, you are so developed, because of your practice that it seems like nothing, not much. And everybody's saying, I don't understand how you're able to handle that. Handle what? I mean, it doesn't even feel like it's an insult or like it's suffering, when it ripens and we have reached a certain level of cultivation. So he says that we should wholeheartedly cultivate ourselves, not thinking that simply reciting the mantras or reciting the sutras are going to provide the protection. The protection is inherent in the actions that we do. Then the mantras can have effect. Then the mudras will have effect, but they won't have effect just because we're chanting them or reciting them. It's only when the mind stream is has a seat of virtue that allows the mantras and the mudras and the recitations to be of effect in your life. I hope I don't make you all go home and everybody see ghosts now. I mean, maybe you can hear it like 100 times, and then by then, the one that you can help will come along, and you don't have any fear because you've heard this so many times. Like you can say to yourself, nothing bothers me. Hmm. Yes.
I, what would you think sometimes about when
at death cafes, people will talk about a visitation from a nearly departed, like a mother, and just because someone comes soon after death to have a conversation and a visit to tell them they're all right, and to have kind of conclusion, that I didn't get the sense that that meant they were in the ghost realm or not. Is that an indication they are?
Well, if no. Mm-mm. I mean, some visitations you'll have will be from bodhisattvas. Even your yidam it'll be beings who are more advanced than you coming to give you something. But I'll tell you, an advanced being wouldn't come in the figure, in the form of your aunt. Yeah. So I would say that they're also they're bad spirits. They're called familiar spirits. They're on a different timing than we are, and they will also, now they can pretend to be your parent. So we get into these spaces that we don't really know. That's why we have to know the level of our cultivation, because if we don't know our cultivation is the only thing that we can judge things by. The cultivation produces a certain state. So you can see two figures, and one you can feel comfortable to share the Dharma with. I mean, like, what's the question? What is the purpose of them being there? What is the dialogue? What is the conversation? If one came to me and said, "Teach me the Dharma," I would say, "Why appear to me? I don't know any Dharma. If you want to learn the Dharma, ask Kuan Yin." And I would just see what the response is. Don't take every manifestation as something that we should engage ourselves in. That's what I'm talking about. Because before you know it, you'll be off into a psychic realm and may not have the capacity to protect yourself. Because when we're asking for powers, or we're asking one to be able, to help beings, then we have to also be doing what it takes to be able to really help them, and not just to think of what a good idea would be. And then when they speak to you, when you can find their Dharma in the Dharma, then you know that you're being visited by bodhisattvas, and allow them to train you. Take to heart what they're saying to you. Contemplate it deeply and see what you get out of it, what kind of advancement you have in the process. And then you'll know, the same way as you know what humans to talk to and not talk to after a few minutes. He's not saying think that this is like such a far away kind of circumstance. He said they're just like human beings. They just have a different form. So what if you thought about that, so that when one appeared to you, it would just be just like a stranger or a family member who came and spoke to you, like who had been living that you met, and you wouldn't have fear of them. All of these are the things that kind of help us begin to erase the lines, these concrete lines that we have set in our mind, and it helps us to really think more of this life like a dream, like a bubble, like a shadow, and in time your concept will your sense of form, which is our greatest way we know ourselves, right? Is this self that will begin to dissolve, and it won't be such a marked line, and life will begin to shift. Life will begin to shift for you, but it all has to be based on a constant examination of our cultivation, not what's out there, but what's in here. And he tells you the progression. So, for instance, the four immeasurables. Who does not know the four immeasurables? Okay, what are the four immeasurables? Okay, so what's the vowel that goes with that?
All beings reside in non-direction, which I'm not speaking.
Yeah, that's it. So I like those because they tell me what to think as opposed to loving kindness, compassion, altruism. And I break it down for me. Tell me how I should think. And so the first one is what?
All beings be peaceful and happy, and have the causes of peace and happiness.
Okay. So that's what I had to start doing with me and the cat. It wasn't like loving kindness. I had to take some specific action. I had to sincerely want his happiness. And instead of getting irritated when he jumps up on the fireplace, on the mantle, I mean, he's part wildcat. I forget what it is, African something or other. And that little 3% has completely overruled the 97% domestic part. But he needs, that's who he is. If you don't want that, don't have him. And so recognizing his need for that, I had to see and look at what brings him happiness. So when I'm talking about the second one is, what's the second one? Suffering and the causes of suffering. So when I saw him ducking, when he see me coming, I knew that I was bringing him suffering, and for no reason except he's a wildcat, So I had to work on me and make the decision that I was going to do it. And what's the third one?
May all beings be free from suffering, and my own heart be delighted.
And my heart be delighted about it. I would just rather read Imparting or something like that than to have to work with my heart being delighted that I have this cat that's just jumping all over everything and knocking off everything every day. He's knocking vases off and got rid of all the plants. Don't send me any plants or flowers home because I can't keep them now. Because I have to take, tend to him and they're just not compatible. And my heart be glad about it. And so I work at my heart being glad about it. I heard some disturbing news, and I have to go home and think about how Kay told me last night that the law was passed that it's illegal for you to wear a mask in public. And Mhm.
Like,
They just, yep, they just passed a law. I knew about it about a month ago, and I wrote, because one of those social people, organizations sent me, because I don't even know what's happening in my own county. But I signed the petition for our, congressmen and so forth to veto it, but it passed
Wear a mask?
You- in North Carolina.
No, it means during protests or like if you're robbing a bank.
right, when you're
You
in
do it over your face.
Yeah, but the whole issue is it doesn't only mean that because I read the bill. Did you read the bill?
I just read an explanation of it.
I read the bill, which is why action or so. What is they have the organizations that read these bills, and when one is really bad, they send it to you. So in case you didn't read it, which I didn't, you know about it. And of course, Juju sent it to us because she's big in all of that. And I mean, it's already uh, not wearing a mask when you're robbing a bank. Okay. But this allowed that to squeak in with that wearing masks in public. So y'all might have to come bail me out because I'm definitely going to wear one. I mean, actually, I'm leaving town and I'm a little scratchy and there's an uptick in whooping cough and I've had a little issue for weeks, so I want to protect people on the plane, and I want to be protected on the plane. So I'm gonna have my mask on, and
I'm
so
thinking about robbing a bank. I better leave my mask at home.
I think it's mostly protests where people want to,
and
you know, they behave badly in public and they hide their identity.
Right.
yeah, but when you have a law, the law is the law, though. It doesn't say in case you're robbing a bank or in case you're protesting. It's a no mask in public ordinance. You see, and that's how things get all messed up. Yeah, it does. I mean, it's like when they passed the rule that you couldn't have what do you call it? Like if you have a place of business, you couldn't have a bathroom that was unisex. So you could have male, you could have females. Like we had male, we had female, and we had a unisex bathroom at Hartwood, and we were advised that we could not have the unisex bathroom. So then people started writing us saying, we're going to cancel our retreats. We're not coming to North Carolina. I'm like, this is the reason why you really need to come. To just bring the energy and the clarity here to this area. So that's so it's in this sense that I'm talking about ghosts. If you don't want to see one, okay, but I'm just saying that you might. And you remember this talk that I'm giving today, that one has to arouse the four immeasurables. That's your protection, that's your defense, even if there was one that was at Hartwood and he tried to push a visitor off. You know how we had that ravine, and that visitor ended up leaving because he said it's something, and it just keeps pushing on my back when I'm back there, and he ended up leaving. But so then he went to another person, and he was trying to choke her. But that one was a spiritual practitioner. It was Harmony, and Harmony said, "Really?" She said, what do we have to do this? And then she talked to the being, and I think after that he didn't bother us anymore. We just knew we just knew he was there. So sometimes when we had to go up to the fourth floor, we like just announced, we coming up here, we're not messing with your turf. You know, we just have to come get something, and we just get whatever we came for. And we left him because he wasn't interested in hearing the Dharma or establishing any kind of kind relationship. And you could feel that, and we weren't capable of helping him, you know. And so, but we had the protection of all the other ghosts there. They were, they were all right. One that was like a ball of light that would just move up and down the hall. There was some animal, really, really, really big animal, that when he ran to the window like dogs do, he was at the top of the window. That's how big he was. There was the perfume lady. She Maureen. We couldn't even rent out that room because as soon as we assigned it to someone, then she was in the room and the perfume was so strong it would choke. But Maureen could be in there with her, so that became Maureen's permanent room. There was a guy who smoked the cigar. He was around because he was smoking the cigar. And I don't think anyone ended up remaining afraid of them, did we? No. Yes, I'm sorry.
So, what about when someone has lost someone and they are inconsolable and they have a deep desire to want to reconnect with that person that's gone?
Well, the first thing is kind of what we should not do is have the deep desire to reconnect, because that person now has dropped off the form. Whoever you connect with is not that person, because that person has now evolved into the right or the mind stream, the consciousness has now attached to or created a body suitable for the karma that's ripening now, So I remember when Pannavati died, and just shortly before he died, and a couple of days after he passed, it seemed like he was visiting everybody, but he wasn't visiting me. And so I said, I just, I can deal with this. I just need a little bit. I just need a little bit from you, just a little bit, so that my mind can move on. And then that night, he appeared in the sky. It was just like the roof of the house was gone. And there he was in the sky, a dark sky with the lights light of the stars. And he said, "Would you like to dance with me?" And so dance meant Tai Chi, a Tai Chi dance. And then I went, I had an outer body experience, and I was big as he was, big as the sky. And we did a Tai Chi dance. And he says, "This is the last time. And you know that, right?" And I said, "Yes, I know." And that was it. Now, there have been a couple of times since then, maybe 2 or 3 times, that I have encountered the being formerly known as Pannavati, because it wasn't Pannavati any longer. He's another, not he's another being. There is another being. The torch has been passed. And there is another being there who in the past was Pannavati. And so I recognize that. But see, if we don't make those incremental shifts, we will craft another story that meets what the mind that we want to have concerning this. We'll craft enough. Did I hear somebody come in?
Oh, God.
About
What's up there?
5 minutes ago? No,
I heard someone too.
I thought,
Well, it sounded like Brian. He's in a conference in the car.
okay, okay. Okay, no, I heard the door. Mm-hmm.
I'm not scared.
Yeah. Oh, no, I just thought somebody thought they couldn't come in, and I just wanted to, yes. Mhm.
I'm just curious around, these appearances. I won't go into it, but I certainly had one with my father in a deep meditation, and wrote about it. And I would say on a personal note, lately I've been feeling very vulnerable to outside energy. It was interesting, the day I broke my wrist, I remember telling my good friend, boy, I feel very vulnerable. For some reason, to go out, and sure enough, my tennis partner knocked me down.
Mhm.
And I broke the fall, and I'm just curious about that. And, the last few days I've been trying to read about protective measures, and I was reminded that maybe a mantra is a seal of sorts. And I don't want to throw your talk off, but I'm curious around how do we protect ourselves when we're feeling particularly vulnerable to,
So I would say if I'm feeling particularly vulnerable, then I would heed my own feeling, and I could stay in. I mean, we're not going to make everything line up with our plans. Of course we do try to, and it takes something to get really sensitive, to what's happening, and what you're encountering. I've started thinking of myself differently instead of thinking of myself as Pannavati who's trying to penetrate and defrag and unpack all this. I keep thinking of myself as the universe. I think the Dharmakaya is that, it's not that that's a part of us, it's that we are that. And the more I think about that, then I should have some capacity to know some things, because all of it is me, and so that's how we get more and more sensitive, not through somebody else telling you something like, maybe fortune teller or whatever, but for you realizing signs and indications for yourself, and this is not something you can read a chapter in a book and say, okay, I got it, but you have to be paying attention, to what signals you're getting, and you yourself learn how to line up, with your own signals. This is the hard part, because what we got trial and error. You don't know till you know, but when you know, you know. But before that time, you don't know. So you have to go through a training, and after a while you start to, let's say you feel something. I used to be a real estate agent, and I like to go and look at houses at night, so I could show them during the daytime. So I spent nighttime running around. Sometimes they didn't have electricity on. I take a flashlight, but I was never afraid to go into a house alone. I mean, that's what I did. But one day I went to a house, and it was in a really good neighborhood. And I opened the door, and as soon as I stepped in the door, there was presence in the house. So I called out, "Hello, hello, is anybody here?" I'm the real estate agent. I didn't go any further because I could sense life in the house. And then this guy called out, and he said, this is my sister's house for sale, and I was passing through the state, and she said I could stay here for the night, and so I said, okay. He said, I'll be gone in the morning. And I said, okay. And I just backed out, locked the door, and I went in. But that was, I had to know the feeling for me that said danger. Sometimes it says caution, and then maybe I learned to sit with myself to get these, we talk about supernatural powers, right? But it's not like supernatural, like it's woo-woo spooky stuff. It's just that your bandwidth expands. Yes.
I have an example of, I was visiting my sister and brother-in-law many years ago here on the 4th of July, and their plan was to go to this lake nearby, but I didn't know where it was. And the sky looked horrible, and we thought, well, and my brother-in-law said, it was probably fine there. We went outside, and my sister and my hair stood up on our arms, and we just sort of felt the universe saying, it's not safe. And we said, we don't want to go. And he said, oh, and it was the I one came in. And I want to be there. I don't want to miss. So we got in the car. The Suburban was destroyed by hail before we got there. We had to pull over and just destroyed. And had we listened, it was the universe talked. That what I want came more overrode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So humility helps us to become, to be able to be vulnerable, because that's part of the pushing forward of the I agenda, but it helps us to settle back and to listen, and we will get signals that we can, and we can know in some kind of way. Her hair stood up on her arms, sometimes I have to get really quiet to hear something, and I hear it. It's sort of like in a voice kind of way, But I'm going to tell you, it doesn't hang around long. It's not going to argue with you, or if there is the warning coming and you want to have it your way, they'll just let you have it your way, And so I'm saying all of this so that you can pay attention and notice if things are how things are shifting with you, and what you actually think about it, and how you and your capacity to listen and to respond, or with this fear arising, and or if there's resentment arising, or we have to know our own minds. That's what I'm saying. And then you'll be able to trust that. I know a lot of people who can do that for others, but they can't work their way out of wet paper bag. Yeah. I mean, because mostly we want to take these things we have and use them to help other people. But they're for us first. And when it becomes so detached from the I, me, and mine, then you really be able to help people. I was just thinking, I've been reading about how one of the biggest problems we have in our county is homelessness, and they named 3, and whatever they were, they are the same ones that are in the big metropolitan cities, and I think we have something. Well, we had, when I moved here in 2004, we had 100 social service organizations in a town with 10,000 people. And we still, couldn't meet the need. And I said, something is wrong here, but anyway, I got involved in doing something, and And so as I was reading this, my heart went out to our community, like how many churches we have, and, how many spiritual centers and how many people that want to help. And yet we have these problems, you know. And so it became clear to me that my first go-to was, okay, what can I start? You know, and the second thing that came to me is with your broke down, almost end in body, nothing. And then the third thing that came to me is that if I could change my mind, the way that I think, then I would be able to do something that most people cannot do, because conditions can change in accordance with your mind. And that the foundation of that is your virtue and your discipline, not just when you want it or not just when it benefits you, but you put first in your life. And I was clear, but Diane Pannavati, self, was ready to jump up and do something, because that sounds good. But there are not many people who are going to be able to help through supporting the consciousness raising of the community, So when I read that about the article, I felt bad because you know what I did? I didn't do any intercession around that bill. I didn't send up any blessings on the community to tamp down ignorance. I didn't do anything except send a letter off to the to our public officials saying this is a bad bill. That's all. I don't think anybody's robbing a bank without a mask. The robbing the bank is the issue, not the mask. But when you make a blanket law and then they start, enforcing it, then you have an issue. But I didn't use any of my proved weapons. That's what I'm saying. I just did a political thing, And now we've got to try to undo something that's a bad, bad law. It has to be more specific or something. And I can tell you by having a store during the time that we had the mask thing, I'm going to tell you how some minds are going to interpret it. Because when it was the other way around, when the government was requiring masking, and I tried to enforce it, they would spit on the floor, they'd spit at you, cuss you out. We closed the stores. We just can't work with people like this because nothing good is going to be cultivated, Yeah. And so this is what I'm talking about and thinking through. And after the really working on those 4 immeasurables all the time. The second would be on the 6 parameters in Theravada. We've broken them out into 10, but the six parameters, the 6 perfections. What are the 6 perfections?
Generosity, virtue, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom.
Okay, so that means that you can't work on one of them. I need patience, so I worked a lot on patience because that was a stumbling block for me. But you can't just work on the one. You have to go round robin, and you have to examine yourself and work on them all the time. And when I say work on them, I mean notice when it's arising, and then do the action that would negate the feelings or would be the opposite of the feelings that are arising. And that's not easy to do. So we can sit on our cushion and want to love everybody. But when somebody is doing something that is potentially harmful to us, or, that we just don't like, then can you?
Or highly desirable.
Or highly or highly desirable, can you say no? I have a dear friend, and she has a really, really, really good heart. But she will do anything her husband wants to do. And she thinks that that's love. Love for me is doing what he wants to do. And I say, do what he wants to do unless it's the wrong thing to do. And she can't differentiate that. Oh, she can, but she won't. So he says that if we're not practicing in that way, then we're not going to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. So the focus is on wholeheartedly cultivating ourselves. How much of the Dharma we actually carry out, and whether those actions are in accord with the precepts. That goes with all of that. The second question is about someone who entered an evil state while meditating. Actually, this is a problem that often occurs. It is not unusual. People say that such and such meditation method he used is right, or such and such meditation method he used is wrong. But I say that all methods are wrong. However right a meditation method may be, it is also wrong in this case. What is right? You have to start from the beginning. You have to start from learning the sutras. There is no other path. All meditation methods are not right in this case. As long as you speak of meditation methods and you have not started from the beginning, then you are mistaken. You must begin with cultivation. What is meant by meditation practice? I tell you sincerely, it is complete nonsense. If meditation practice alone could cause one to become accomplished in the Dharma, then the doctrine of cause and effect spoken by the Buddha would be untenable. If the doctrine of cause and effect alone could cause one to become accomplished in the Dharma, then the Dharma practices the Buddha kindly taught others would be untenable. Therefore, both must be part of one's cultivation. It's very important. The cultivation the Buddha spoke of is building your character. Only when your character has been raised to the level of the character of a holy person will the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas in the 10 directions trust you. For they will then know that you will not become an evil person or harm others with the powers that are inherent in the cultivation or development of the practices. These are not practices without power. And so it's a matter of whether one actually is fit, to hold them and fit to use them. So I never get upset when, or really wish for something to arise, some capacity, to arise in me, because I know me. But what I want is a penetration, a capacity to penetrate, the Dharma, so that I can clearly understand it. And when I do, then there's a corresponding ability that goes with that. I hope I'm explaining it so that you understand the difference. the difference in grasping for or craving or wanting something. That's not it. What we should want is to actually enter into it fully, and then the fruit of it will be clearly displayed, you know. And so that's all I want, something that gives me more understanding of the Dharma, as opposed to wanting to appear a certain way to someone else, or to appear to know something that I don't know, or to or speak about things beyond my own realization. I talked about things for 30 years that were beyond my own realization. And I feel not that it was a wasted 30 years, but that at some point, you know, I was waiting to know how to get into the game. And the way that we get into the game is through the path of humility, you know, realizing that not that we don't know, because we know there's a lot that we don't know, but realizing that what we do know is on the low end of how to know it and how to understand it. So the more understanding can come in those areas and in those regards. But if I already think that when I got down, then I'm going to miss what's possible to get, because I'm at the beginning stage of knowing it, and I want to put myself up here at the top end of knowing it. You know, and it's in that kind of humility, when you have passed through a barrier and entered into a different space, like if I leave from this room and go to that room, I'm at the beginning of the room when I cross that barrier. You know, I'm not at the front door, which I would call the back now because I'm entering from this side, but I'm at my first steps into that. And we can get so happy and we can get so excited about that we cannot go any further. And that's why there's so much of the teaching on humility. You know, once we know something, we start to begin to realize how much we don't know. And that leaves the space open, the walkway open for us to come to know more and more. So when he's talking about meditation here, you think about us, mostly we just meditated, right? That's our introduction to the Dharma. Didn't want to talk about the Dharma too much because that sounds too much like religious talk or spiritual talk. But here, if you just do this, just sit down and I'll give you some words and use those words. And to an extent, it has helped us, but it only helps us to a certain degree. We cannot penetrate the barriers because we don't know the rules of the universe that allow for the true penetration. And so so then it becomes out of order. He says, therefore you must obey the words of the master, even with respect to details or small matters. It doesn't matter if you don't obey the words of your master, if it's unclear whether or not he or she is a master. However, you must obey the words when one believes that one is a master. So now this like you must obey. It's not offered in that sense. It's offered in the sense that if you believe that someone possesses something and it's demonstrated in their life, some qualities and so forth, then you go with that. But don't think that way about them and do whatever you want to do. You know, it's better. Either you think they don't possess a quality or you think they do. Said if you think they do, then follow the instruction. If you think they don't, then go and find somebody else whose suggestions and instructions you can't follow. It says, now I'll talk about the main question. Who really understands what is meant by the term beginningless, ignorance-based karmic forces of living beings? This is not a term that present-day Dharma kings, Rinpoches, or venerable ones are able to understand. However, there was a person in this world who truly understood that term thoroughly, Shakyamuni Buddha. He understood it. Because he understood it, he was able to expound the concept of limitless Dharma power, the concept of the formless Dharma realm, the concept of limitless living beings, the concept of countless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Why? That term is an absolute truth of the universe. It's an absolute truth of reality nature. Living beings have no beginning. What is meant by no beginning? Many cultivators apply a worldly way of thinking when they attempt to fathom what no beginning is. They ask themselves, from what time can one start to calculate the duration of no beginning? This way of thinking is a mistake because they do not understand the truth. They use impermanent data to summarize no beginning. However, no beginning is not something that is impermanent. No beginning is a Dharma that is truly permanent and without an endpoint. I will use an example to help you understand. A short while ago, a Dharma king here asked about this. Actually, he was right to ask the question since there's no way he could know the answer. Even the Dharma king who recognized him as a Dharma king is still far from being able to know the answer. Actually, all things in the world have no beginning. There is no one thing that is not beginningless. I will give you an example. There's a pine tree outside, right? That pine tree came into being from beginninglessness. Did it grow from a pine seed that fell to the ground? I ask you. Did it? Just answer. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Right. It grew from a pine seed that fell to the ground. Where did that pine seed come from? Another tree. Right. As long as you understand that a pine tree yielded that seed, then you're right. Where did the previous pine tree come from? Right. Going back an unimaginably large number of years until the very far past, where did the first pine tree come from? You just answered that it grew from seed yielded by seed. I ask about the first pine tree. Why did you again speak of a seed yielded from a previous pine tree? This is where the problem lies. If that first pine tree didn't come from a seed yielded by a previous pine tree, then where did it come from? You cannot say, as some religions do, that a certain God created it. That's nonsense because I'm going to ask you who created that God.
What's his name? Condition.
He said, God created everything. I said, who created God? I continued to ask that question. He suddenly felt that something wasn't right. I said, when you sit down and carefully think about it, you will see that you are not right. His view is not the absolute truth. The absolute truth is what the Buddha said when he spoke of things coming from beginninglessness. Beginninglessness means there is no beginning. Not only does that pine tree have no beginning, you, a Dharma king, also have no beginning. Your father fathered you, your paternal grandfather fathered your father, your great paternal grandfather fathered your paternal grandfather, going back into the past. Who would be the eldest of all? Wouldn't he come from beginninglessness? He would have no beginning. A beginning could never be found for him. It's not a matter of trying to find the earliest person. It's a matter of not having the right. I have question right there because I think a word was dropped. Not having the right question and forever being unqualified to come up with the earliest question. A person. It is a matter of being unqualified to conceive of the earliest person. How could you conceive of such a person? Thus, this is a matter of beginninglessness. With respect to boundlessness, the universe is truly boundless. The four great elements that exist in the universe, earth, air, fire, water, together with emptiness and consciousness, make up everything. Everything that is contained in the entirety of space is called the universe. Now I ask you again to think about something. How large is this space? It is boundless. It has no boundaries. It's beginningless. It is without an outer border. It is formless. If its boundary could be found, then there would be an end or limit. In such case, things within the boundary would be called the universe. But what about outside the boundary? If there is a boundary, there is that which is inside the boundary and that which is outside the boundary. My heavens, what is outside the boundary? You might say there are also mountains, rivers, lands, and four great elements outside the boundary. My reaction to that would be, you're speaking nonsense. I just told you that the four great elements are contained within the universe. Why are you drawing a small circle to enclose the universe? You might say, I'm drawing a very large circle. A very large circle is like a small circle that is as big as a pellet. As long as you say that the universe has form and a boundary, then there is that which is inside the boundary and that which is outside the boundary. Inside the boundary are all the things composed of the four great elements. You say outside the boundary are also things composed of the four great elements. All you're doing is drawing a line separating two parts of one whole. Don't draw such a line, and there will be no such boundary. So, this is giving me something I was going to say to think about, but it's almost impossible to think about it because we've already been pre-programmed that there is a boundary. We've been pre-programmed that there is such thing as a first. And if we say what comes before the first, we say what silly talk you talk. But when I'm really thinking about it, then it feels silly to me now to talk about a first. I just have the wrong idea, the wrong programming. But if from the beginning I was introduced to a concept of beginninglessness, you see, I would have a whole different view and a whole different space that I could penetrate. But I'm struggling because I have been indoctrinated with the concept of a first and with the concept of a boundary. And so I can't imagine anything that doesn't fit within that first concept that I was introduced to, that I still hold, even though I talk all the Buddha words. But I know within myself that I have a concept of first, the first, and I have a concept of boundary, even though I talk about boundlessness. And so that's what I'm working on right now, that I can adopt a concept of no beginning or beginningless time, the same way that I could take up a concept of in the beginning. It's almost like they're two sides of one coin. And so that's me, Pannavati, personally. That's what I'm working on. That I guess it doesn't get any more elementary than that. But as I'm sitting with that, not postulating that it's not really true, but I'll fool my mind, but really trying to enter in, the experience of that. And I'm setting myself up for building a structure upon that, for living in my everyday life, truly without limit. We sing a song. I hope I won't sing that song in a couple of years. I love the song. And it's called A Touch of Love. And in it, the author says, but I'm only human. I can only do so much. And then what's the next two lines? All the miracles we need is just one touch from me to you, helping someone who can't make it on their own. No one wants to be alone. At a time like this, only joy should exist. But when the world gets too much, all we need is a touch of love. Now, I love the song. I love all the good feelings that it brings. And I can move with that song and grow someplace. But I'm going to hit a wall at some point because I'm thinking I'm only human. I can only do so much. I brought it all back to me and my limitations. Yeah.
When you all sing that, I get elevated beyond Nancy Human. And it makes me, that touch isn't Nancy Human touching, it's beyond me that that song takes me to. So the words don't limit when you sing it to what I feel in terms of any kind of limitation. It actually was one of the ways I glimmered vastness.
Okay, so then you can use the song, but for me, it's past tense because it limits me. So everybody has to know for them where something continues to be useful and when they've outpaced it or when they've outgrown it or when they're at stop to go to the next thing. That being understood in that way, there's some way to understand it that is beyond that. So in my practice, I'm not thinking so much about my humanness because I'm trying to excel to the mind of a bodhisattva. And now, sure, bodhisattvas are humans, and if you're in the causal stage, the first stage, the second stage, but then you start to move beyond those spaces, and if I've already lockstepped myself into like the lowest rung, then I'm going to stay in the lowest rung. I'll be hellacious. I'll be really, really good and really strong and really powerful there, but I can't move if I've locked myself into that space. And so I'm working on concepts of limitlessness, boundlessness, beginninglessness. And I'm having a hard time with it, but I'll just tell you, I believe that there is that. And there are many things that I have stepped into that in the beginning either didn't make sense or I didn't think I would ever have a good understanding of it. That one day something just turns over and you see it in that totality and you wonder, how could I have seen it in any other kind of way? But that doesn't happen until it happens. Yes.
I'm curious about the karma that is created when we produce something like a touch of love that has a limit. But we know that we're trying to exceed beyond that limit. And so we're maybe performing or we're singing or we're producing something that has a message with essentially a limit. But we're trying to go beyond that limit. How does that impact our movement towards,
I understand the
limitlessness,
question.
and then how that impacts people?
I understand your question, that your thing should be suitable for the hearer. So you should know what, and speak to people according to where they are. So the impact is a good impact if you're bringing someone to a realization, and if one has passed that realization and you haven't, you can't bring anything to them. And if you know, so everything you say, or if you're giving a Dharma talk, you may not be speaking to everybody in the room, And sometimes people are offended because they think you're speaking to them. Like a lot of the things I say, I'm not talking to Jim at all, and that's not a brag on Jim, that's just a fact, so he has to know within himself that wasn't for me. Or like at one time I understood that, but I have now gone past that understanding and I've tacked on an understanding. So I'm not talking always about levels higher and higher. I'm talking about depth, penetrating it more deeply, and everybody deserves a conversation that helps them where they are. So if I was going there, and that's why, like before we go, like when we're setting up, we have done a lot of introspection just to pick the right songs to be prepared for minds that are there. We have some high ones, we have some low ones, but nothing above where we are, so that what we offer has value, because we give it its vitality, we give it its life, we give it its power. So so in that sense, I think your question was, were we creating bad karma by
Knowing that
yes,
there's a limit when
yes,
we're trying to go.
I knew that was what you were thinking.
You know what is really on my mind? You, I, all of us at our age are really bound by the concepts of separation and beginning and all that. How would we even begin to raise a child who didn't think like that? I can't, I'm thinking about, obviously, my grandson. I wouldn't know how to approach that with a little one. But we need to.
Yeah, we do.
We need to raise children.
And I think if you were raising your grandchild now compared to, say, 4 years ago, you'd be teaching him lots of different things, or maybe he was too young for you to teach then. But certainly what you have to offer him would be in accord with what you're now experiencing, in the Dharma. So one doesn't have to. What we can say is, if we look out at the world, this is what we taught our children. Oh, this is the life we lived in front of them, And the only way that gets better is that we have to live a different life in front of them. And so we do have regrets as we're on the old side now, and I'm looking at the insecurities of the young people. When I say the young insecurities of the young people, I'm talking about 40 and 50 years old, and there are other things that, so unless we really excel in our journey towards Buddhahood, we're not going to be able to be of much use. If we don't have enough energy to put into that, then that's cause and effect. I might want to, if I was 20 and know what I know now, I could really help in a different way than I can help now,
But we have to take what we have now and share that.
So yes, we do, and I would say the best way to share it is to really master it yourself. I mean, if I didn't have the opportunity to be exposed to certain truths, then what I would be trying to do is get myself ready. I'll tell you the truth, get myself ready. So the next go round, you know, I can pick up where I left off, you know, and that's the way I think a lot now, you know, because I'm more limited just in physical capacity. You know, I'm more limited even in mental capacity. I'll tell you, like Alzheimer's is a real thing. You know, just this is part of the process of birth, aging, sickness, and death. You know, we're not going to outrun that. Our Dharma's not going to outrun that. So we really actually have it. Just seeing it, what could be helpful is seeing and knowing what time it is, you know, and then finding a place to put our resources that will support the betterment, you know, of the future, because I'm not going to be able to offer it. But there is somebody that is, you know, so out there investigating and joining with and contributing to and supporting other programs. They don't have to be Buddhist programs, you know, but where truth is coming forward in a way that can help people, where you no longer have the strength and the energy to do it. That's a way, you know, because otherwise we're still just thinking about I, you know, me, myself, I, what I want to do, what I want people to know, all of that, you know, and that has a certain kind of clinging that will take us away from the good that we could do at this stage in our life. Also, it is, like to say, like, I realized this year, my first year of going back out and traveling and doing retreats, that I don't want to travel like that anymore, you know, but I've made some commitments. I got to keep those commitments. But I know for me, I'm not going to be doing that. What I will do, I can't say. I just figured out what I'm not willing to do, you know, yeah. Well, I'm not even sure I'm the one who should be sharing, I'm saying, you know, because I have a certain mode of language. I have a certain way, you know. I mean, when you really get to a place, you really start to take yourself out of the equation and ask the question, what is needful? And you can respond to it just as if you were the one doing it, with that kind of joy, you know, with that kind of encouragement, with that kind of support, you know. But you have to take yourself out of it to get the answer. And we shouldn't even think of great and small, you know, but just doing what can be done. That is great. Even if it's a small thing, it is great. See? And so we have to still have some worldly mentality that we have to get out of it. I mean, the Buddha, he didn't have tens of thousands of disciples, not him personally, you know, but his teaching continued. Jesus didn't have 40 million disciples, or how many they got. What's the Christian number? You know?
Bunch.
I mean, when he left, he had 12. He had 12. So you see, one plants, maybe we're just planting something. But if we don't plant it, another can't water what hasn't been planted. No? So maybe the first group is only 12 or 20 or 30. No, but then as they move forward, then it becomes 50, 100, 200. Then it becomes 2,000. No, we don't have to have a dog in the fight, is what I'm saying. But we should be trying to live the life that we, how do they say, live the life that we sing about in our song. That's what has merit. And that's what has benefit. So with respect to boundlessness, the universe is truly boundless. Oh, it's time in. And he talks about how one of the principles and characteristics,
Venerable,
yes,
Rob asks if he can ask a question.
yes.
Go ahead, Rob. Go ahead and unmute. He's unmuted, but we do not hear him.
Can you write it?
You can write your question if you like, Rob. We can't hear you. Okay. Not clear. Go ahead, Rob.
Go ahead.
You
Okay.
can always, if you figure it out, you can always.
Okay.
Chime right
Or
in.
if you can, or if you can write it. Okay. So what I'm trying to introduce us to through this question is an understanding that there's a cause planted, and when this cause matures, there will be an effect, right? And any characteristic of a conditioned phenomena is impermanent, right? Impermanence means having the nature to what? Change, right? So when something is done that produces a cause, or something is said that produces a cause, and that cause has an effect, because this is impermanence, it means that it's not always at the end going to be the thing that it was at the beginning when the cause was produced, because causes have effects, and those effects become other causes, right? And if you don't know that, then you'll get stayed and locked into a cause producing an ever effect, and you'll get turned around. You got to have the fluid and the flexibility. And I gave an example of it last week, I think. And he gives an example of it now. He says, like, if you boil water, then based on the relationship of cause and effect, heat will be produced. And that heat will cause the water to boil. The water was originally cold. However, after the fire began burning, heat energy was produced, and the water is impermanent. You felt the water a minute ago, it would have been cold. You feel it a few minutes from now, it'll be hot. If you feel it after it boils, you'll burn yourself. This is cause and effect here that has the result of turning the fire into heat that changes the effect. So when there is a main cause, many secondary causes also ensue. When the fire is burning, gas is being consumed. When the fire is burning, gaseous vapor spreads into the air. Perhaps there is much of this gaseous vapor, perhaps there's not much of it. When the fire is burning, the vapor emitted causes the room to become warm. When the fire is burning, this pot becomes hot and makes a sound. Perhaps there are microorganisms stuck to the pot and they die. There are myriad changes taking place, not just one cause producing one effect. Not only will the secondary causes arise, they will also cause corresponding effects. An effect will follow every cause. And so we don't think about that so much in life when a cause produces a condition. When we start talking about cause and condition in Buddhism, I'm talking about how deeply you have to see this, because that condition becomes a new cause that produces another condition. And that condition becomes a cause that produces another condition. And you said, yeah, but right here in the beginning, this was said, and we are all upset about it because we haven't looked at the secondary causes that arose since that time. And we're still pressing in on an original response or original condition that arose from the first cause. I hope you all are listening to me, because this is what messes us up so much in everyday life. This happened, and now we're in this situation. But we're not just in this situation, because there are secondary, and what's the next one? Tertiary causes that are produced, but we're still looking at what? The original cause. And so it's because of that. And this is how it ties in for me, and I'm through now. But this is how it ties in for me around notions of boundlessness and no first cause, and developing the capacity to examine things in the present moment, and not from what something was, or something that was said, or something that was done, and falling back on that and breeding discontent and just having a misunderstanding and can't go further, all of these things. And it has nothing, maybe, just maybe, what was given at that time, that when it was given, it understood what the next effect was going to be, what cause was going to be created to create the next effect, and what cause was going to be created to create a tertiary effect. And then we'd be in the right place with it, except that we're continuing to look at the original cause, and so we can't see or know exactly where we are. Does anybody not understand what I'm saying? Could somebody give it back?
Each cause, each effect creates a cause. That cause can make multiple. It doesn't just make something you read a few days ago. The effect is one, but the causes the results, put it that way, can be many, each of which is creating many, which is creating many, which is creating many. So you can't even go back. This one doesn't even apply anymore.
But that's what we think.
But that's what we think.
Right. That's what we get locked down.
Yeah, that's where we get shut down.
Yeah.
So when something comes in your life this week that changes from how it was supposed to be, and that shifts from, our thinking of this is what it is based on the first cause that we clamped around? You know, what if we can just relax that? Relax that need. That's what causes confusion in our life. Why we get confused about things. Because we're like putting it up against that first cause that we saw. But, you know, it's been constantly changing and shifting because each condition, you know, produced another cause, produced another cause, produced another cause. And we're like got confused, like I don't understand what's happening and why that's happening, because we have not seen the impermanence of the first cause. I'm sharing these kinds of things with you, even as they're being shared with me, because this is the change of mind that we really have to have to surmount and shift conditions in the world. We're just from that first cause responding, reacting, you know, that's it. You know, but I think that there's hope for us when we understand these principles and how they really, really work. Yeah.
This perhaps relates more to something you were saying earlier about the beginning of this. We've all been raised with the cosmological myth of the Big Bang, first cause.
And can you hear him?
Yeah, working out pretty well.
Okay. Let's make sure that they can.
Okay. And just recently, before the notion of the Big Bang was prominent in astrophysics, there was what they call steady state theory. There was no beginning, no end. It was always happening. But that wasn't backed up by any data the way the Big Bang was. It was just sort of a philosophical idea. But just recently, with the work with the James Webb Space Telescope, they've been able to hone in on objects that appear to be older than the universe. You know, how can that be? So the steady state idea is starting to make a comeback, but this time with actual data to support and undergird the notion. But it's interesting to me in terms of the collective psyche, you know, that this notion of beginninglessness, endlessness is entering the dialogue. Consciousness.
I'm not a science person, I'm not a science person, but I now subscribe to popular mechanics because they have all of this science stuff, and it's mind blowing to me because I have touched some kind of truth that is irrefutable, you know, to me, even though I can't talk the science of it. You know, thank goodness they can explain the part that they have unpacked in a way like, oh yeah, that's what the Dharma said. You know, so I just love it. So I spent all day yesterday watching Gaia and all of their scientific things, and I was on my internet reading, and it is so the Dharma, you know. So we're living in a glorious time that, and it's they call it the Dharma ending age. But what I'm so happy about is what has brought the two together for me is Buddha Master's teaching to know the universe, you know, and it's really bringing it back to me in a way that I never had it before. And I've always felt that of spirituality, religion is the highest you know, and I'm not sure I'm in that space anymore because the science, I'm understanding the science. I think this is a science and not a religion, is what I'm saying. And that's what Buddha Master says, it's a science and it's the highest science. Yeah.
I was going to share that Nobel Prize winner Roger Penrose believes that the Big Bang was, quote, not the beginning of our universe, but rather it was the end of the previous one.
Yeah.
That's very cool. It's just expanding and contracting. That's an expansion.
Yeah. And how the Buddha talked about all these kinds of things, you know, and what he saw without a telescope, without, you know, any of that. That was his mind. So that's the mind that I want, because I think that's the mind that really takes us out of samsara. Yeah.
And I think it takes that earnest wanting to get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the Hindu teachings have always taught that we come into existence and then we go out, and it's called pralaya,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's nothing, and then it comes back and it goes out, but progresses each time.
Yeah.
That's been their teachings from the beginning, from the Vedas.
So that's why people in Eastern countries have such a different construct or understanding than, you know, like the Occidental peoples like us. I'm just happy, you know, I just want people to take what they can take and work with what they can work. But one thing that I do see is the connection between, like that virtue is fundamental law, is a fundamental law of the universe. And it's not just a morality schlick that we do, you know, but it is a fundamental law of the universe. And there is a place that is beyond the universe where there is no coming and no going. And I may not get there, but this is a great journey. And it gives you a kind of peace that passes understanding in this world. And it makes your time here useful for others. And not just for, and I can't say you can't, but it's not just for cars, housing, vacation, clothes, you know, and jewelry. That there is a greater purpose that we serve in the universe, and being a part of that, you know, feels wonderful, but you have to really be a part of it. No fake talk, you know, no fake talk. Thank you all for coming today. Keep us in your hearts and in your minds and your prayers, and that what we offer will be a benefit to the people that we see, and it also be of a benefit for us and encouraging us to use our lives wisely and compassionately in service to others. Yeah. So they'll be back on the 17th, I think. That's right, Bushida? I have a couple of more journeys, so I won't be back until the 20-something, 24, but 20-something. And then I have one more retreat away, and then I won't be going anywhere else. One more. And that's it. Thank you all so much. We are really, I'm just grateful for all of you and how you have applied your heart to understand. And I can just really see the growth and the benefit.
Thank you.
Somebody close for us.
May all minds be inspired in an instant. May all beings gravitate towards their natural inclination and realize liberation. May all always be free.
May all minds be inspired in an instant. Okay, so when I come back, what we're going to talk about is mantras and mudras and what they really are.